What is up, NFL fans, and welcome back to another episode of the NFL Whip Around. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Coach Kevin Smith. Coach, what's going on? How was your Christmas, man? We haven't talked since the holiday.
It was great, man. I ruffled some feathers at Christmas, their little white elephant, and stole somebody's present who didn't enjoy it. And I said, "Let's go, man! Come on, this is for real now. We're not messing around.
Hey, it's part of
This
it.
is a set of steak knives, damn it!
Well, I'm glad that you had some enjoyment. I know the Steelers did not provide any enjoyment on our Christmas holiday. That was definitely a
No, they
downer.
didn't. But at least
But
they got so
good.
thoroughly outclassed that you realized pretty quickly what was going on. Like
Yeah.
like that. It was apparent early in that game that they were about to get boat raced, and so it was just like, okay, well, I'm gonna move on now and enjoy a little bit of my Christmas.
Yeah, I wish I could have done that. But still, here we have we're getting ready for the season finale. That's what the season finale, regular season finale, week 18 on the docket. And I always go back to, they don't really do this anymore, but when you go back to like the late 80s, mid 90s, a season finale on a television show was really important. Like that was really big. Like that was like, oh my gosh, it's the finale. They're going to do something. It's going to be a cliffhanger. It's going to be really, really tense, depending on what show you're watching. I don't know what to think about this regular season finale. Are you looking at the slate of games? Because the NFL announced it's Saturday. You have the AFC North teams playing on Saturday. You've got the Browns and Ravens playing early. You've got Steelers, Bengals playing late. If the Ravens win, the Steelers cannot win the AFC North. What do you think about the schedule? And obviously, we knew this Sunday Night Football is going to be Lions and Vikings for the NFC North. What do you think about the finale?
I think Lions Vikings as the last regular season game is absolutely storybook stuff because you've got division rivals. I read that this is the first regular season game in NFL history where you have two teams with 13 wins, at least 13 wins. It's probably going to be 14 wins each playing one another. It's going to decide not just the division, but it's going to decide who gets the bye. And if you're Detroit, you badly need that bye. I mean, I'm sure that Minnesota would like it as well, but Detroit is so banged up and they've got the potential to get some of their guys back. I think that game right then and there is might be the game of the year in the NFL.
Well, that leads us into our first topic, which is the Vikings beat the Packers on Sunday, and it set up that showdown that I just mentioned against the Lions for the top overall seed and automatic bye in the NFC. Before we even get to who you like in this game, who in the hell would have thought that the Vikings would be in this situation? The win total for this, if you were wanting to bet on the Vikings over under, was like 6.5. And here they are potentially going to win 14. They're going to double that number easily. Coach, what do we take away from this Minnesota Vikings team with Sam Darnold and Brian Flores' defense that no one, I don't care if you're the most devout Vikings fan ever, no one saw this coming?
No, it's easy to second guess it. Like you look back and you go, boy, all these teams made a mistake with Sam Darnold. They didn't recognize his potential, or the Pittsburgh Steelers made a mistake when they chose to keep Terrell Austin as their defensive coordinator and let Brian Flores go. But you're right. I don't think that this was something anybody could have anticipated. We talked about this last week on the show. I think Kevin O'Connell is hands down the NFL Coach of the Year. Sam Darnold is hands down the comeback player of the year. I watched most of that Minnesota Green Bay game. Sam Darnold was fantastic. He was throwing the ball into tight windows. He was anticipating receivers coming open. It's incredible when you think about his progress. This is the same guy who gets captured early in his career on the sideline talking about seeing ghosts, which for a quarterback is about as terrifying a thing as you could possibly want, because what it essentially says is he can't process, he can't read what's going on out there. And if you can't do that in the NFL, you're done. I mean, I was talking to Kevin Stefanski back last summer, interviewing him for my Call Sheet podcast. I asked him, what's the number one thing that separates successful from unsuccessful NFL quarterbacks? And he said the ability to process. So you look at where Sam Darnold was early in his career and where he is now. that is an incredible tribute to the coaching job that they've done with him in Minnesota. Now, having a tremendously talented cast of receivers certainly helps, but they brought him along faster and further, I think, than anybody could have anticipated.
I was just going to ask you that. Is this all about Kevin O'Connell and his staff and their ability to coach up a player who clearly has talent but hasn't been in the right place? Or is this just the perfect marriage of you've got Justin Jefferson, who's arguably the best wide receiver in football. You got Jordan Addison, who definitely takes advantage of all the attention that Justin Jefferson gets. You throw in Aaron Jones as a good complementary running back. Is just the perfect situation for a player like Sam Darnold, who we knew had talent coming out of college. It's not like he's some no-name 7th round draft pick that's turning into something that no one saw coming. The guy was a top pick in the NFL draft coming out of USC. Is that what you think it is? It's the perfect, kind of like the perfect storm for success for Sam Darnold?
Yeah, it is. It's all the above. That cast of receivers, throw TJ Hawkinson in there, who's a heck of a tight end. But Darnold said himself that he's learned more about defense in his 1 year in Minnesota than he had in his entire career prior. That what he has learned in Minnesota from Kevin O'Connell and from picking Brian Flores' brain and having to practice against Brian Flores' defense is defensive philosophy and what to anticipate. And he said he knows now what he's looking at when he breaks the huddle and gets up under the ball. Man, he knows what he's looking at, and I think that's all the difference in the world right there. I mean, understanding defense is a bit of like having a bit of a cheat sheet. Yeah. And if you don't understand defense, then you're going to run into the problems that we see a lot of unsuccessful quarterbacks.
So let's go to the main question here. Who do you like in this Sunday night football game between Detroit and Minnesota in Week 18?
Man, the first game came down to a last-second field goal. Lions beat them basically on a walk-off, 31-29, I think that score was. Hard to beat a team twice. But it feels to me like going into Detroit is going to be a tough obstacle. The crowd, I'm sure, will be out of their minds. The communication that it's going to require to be able to be successful in offense is obviously something that Darnold's going to have to deal with. I know Detroit's banged up, and I hate to doubt the Vikings because one thing about the Vikings is at every step of the way this year, when you say like, well, they're a nice story, but they can't keep it going. They've kept it going. So I won't be shocked if they win by any stretch of the imagination. And I think it'll be a really close game, but it just feels like Detroit at home will pull it off.
I got to think, though, you look at these two teams and the way they're trending heading into this game. Boy, does Detroit need the bye, though, right? Am I right? I mean, they are banged up. They could get some players back. Dan Campbell, I think he knows it. And, I mean, I don't see them – I'll ask this a final question before we move on from these two teams. Do you feel like the Lions are trending upward even though they've had success in their winning games, or do you feel like they're kind of treading water while the Vikings clearly are trending in the right direction heading into the playoffs?
No, I think that's a fair assessment of where the Lions are. The injuries have certainly taken a toll. It just feels as though Detroit has been such a good back against the wall team under Dan Campbell that they seem to revel in the adversity. And that I don't know what's going to happen. We're recording on Monday, so we don't know what's going to happen in the Monday night football game. But it feels like the Lions are going to be able to kind of rally with the opportunity to get that bye, get home field advantage throughout the playoffs, play potentially an NFC championship game in Detroit in the first time, I think, ever. That just feels like Dan Campbell, as a master motivator, will find a way to get his team over that hump.
It's going to be exciting. That I knew that once Minnesota beat Green Bay on Sunday, I even was talking with our David Stefano at Fans First Sports Network, who covers the Vikings. He said, "Hope you're ready for Sunday Night Football." He said, "I've had it booked for a while now." So he's ready to go. I'm sure the Vikings, it's going to be a great game. I'm going to look forward to that. Let's go to our next topic. There's only one playoff spot left in the AFC. The Chargers claimed their spot this Saturday, and then they beat the I think they beat the Chargers. No, they beat the Patriots, I believe. I don't know. I get
all smacked the Patriots.
That's what it was.
40-7.
So now In the AFC, Denver, Cincinnati, and Miami are competing for that final spot. Denver can claim it by beating the Chiefs in Week 18. If Denver loses, Miami is in with a win over the Jets. If Denver and Miami both lose, Cincinnati gets in if they beat the Steelers. Who do you think claims a 7 seed? Now, before we get there, Coach, this is interesting because, again, I mentioned this earlier. Saturday's slate of games, the Bengals will play. So the Bengals will, if they lose to Pittsburgh on Saturday night at 8:00 when that game kicks off, they're done. There's no way for them to make the postseason if they lose that game. But if they win, then they have to watch all day Sunday to try and find out what's going to happen with their playoff future. What do you think about all these teams, and who do you think gets that last spot?
Well, I think this, man. I think if I were a bettor, I'm staying away from all these games because there's so many variables in play here, right? Pittsburgh's going to know before kickoff whether or not they've got a shot to win the AFC North.
Right.
That may dictate what happens in their game against Cincinnati.
Well, but hold on, Coach. If the Steelers lose, they would have to go. So if the Ravens win and the Steelers lose, the Ravens go to Baltimore as the 6th seed. If the Steelers win, they go to Houston as the 5. I think that means something to me.
That means something to me too. Houston is the most beatable team in the playoff field right now, at least of all the teams that are hosting games. And yeah, it's much more attractive going to Houston than have to go back to Baltimore, no doubt about that. Still, though, I would think that there's got to be some sort of a letdown if Baltimore wins, and they're going to win. They're playing the Browns. And Cincinnati will be a very motivated team, no doubt about that. But right, if you're Pittsburgh, you want to go into the playoffs on a 4-game losing streak? I mean,
no.
You need to pull it together just to build some confidence back. Then you get into the Sunday games. So Denver, they control their own fate. They're playing Kansas City. Kansas City is said to be resting a lot of guys, and obviously that will help Denver's cause. But Kansas City is such a find-a-way team. And it just feels like it's no layup for the Broncos, even if Kansas City plays their JV, because they're going to play to win, and they're going to figure out a way to make life difficult on Denver. So I don't know what's going to happen in that game. I would like to think that Denver's going to win that game against the backups, but you don't know. And oh, by the way, Jeff, I'm a little pissed that they're sitting everybody, because if they weren't, what did I say, like 2 months ago, they're going to go 16-1, and here they are right on the precipice of it. But
that's true. You're right.
Well, I don't know, man. So Cincinnati's the longest shot, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Because they need so many things to happen. If I had to bet money, I think that Denver finds a way to win, and that they become the 7th seed. What about you?
That game is in Denver, by the way. So the Chiefs are on the road. But let me ask you this question as a coach. The Kansas City Chiefs have secured the number 1 spot in the AFC playoff picture. They get a bye. Would you rest your players for 2 weeks before your first playoff game? Is there an element of rust there that concerns you?
I think with some teams, yes. But Kansas City's such a veteran team.
Yeah.
Does Patrick Mahomes really need to play in that Denver game to be at his best when the playoffs begin? Does Travis Kelce, does Chris Jones? I mean, they are the 2-time defending Super Bowl champs. They are a been there, done that team with a Hall of Fame coach. And I'm sure they'll be ready to go. So I don't think it's an issue for that team. If this were maybe like the Lions, a team that really hasn't been there much, then maybe you'd think a little bit more about it.
Okay, that's fair. And by the way, just so people know that are listening, both of these games, Dolphins at Jets and Chiefs at Broncos, are at 4:25 on Sunday. So for all those being the Bengals, if they lose, they're out. And then the Dolphins are going to be scoreboard watching like crazy, trying to see if the Chiefs with Carson Wentz we don't know this for a fact, but we're assuming that Carson Wentz will be the quarterback of the Chiefs on the road against Denver. There's something about the Broncos, though, that I don't believe in. I watched a good bit of that game against Cincinnati, and that was a tough place to play going into Paycor. They're motivated, and I watched Bo Nix and some of the plays that they made. It's a rookie quarterback. It's a rookie quarterback. And when you have a rookie quarterback, it's so difficult to try and predict the trajectory of an individual game. And so he made some rookie mistakes. And I could see him, even against, like you said, the Chiefs JV, making a key mistake. Let's go out on a limb here. Let's have some fun here. I'm going to predict that the Steelers beat the Bengals in week 18 and they end their season. I think that's motivation for Pittsburgh. I really do. Then I think that the Dolphins beat the Jets because the Jets are god awful and Aaron Rodgers just wants the hell out of New York and they're going to oblige. And I think the Chiefs beat the Broncos and I think the Dolphins get in. That's my prediction. What do you see happening?
I won't be shocked by that at all. Not at all. Aaron Rodgers, by the way, flat out quit on the Jets yesterday. I mean, he put in the backup. He said it's 33-0. Isn't it time for Tyrod to play? That was what he said at the press conference. It's time to get Tyrod's ass in there. I don't feel like doing this anymore. That's what he said. He didn't say that literally, but that's what he said. I mean, what a disgrace, man. If anybody puts that dude on their roster next year, they deserve what they're going to get. Because
are you surprised?
No, not at all. We talked about this back in the beginning of the year, man. I mean, we remember when we were talking about him going to Egypt and all that other stuff, giving him one set of rules and everybody else another set of rules. That's not going to end well. Well, it hasn't. But no, I won't be shocked if Miami gets in because there's no layup there for any of those other teams.
But your prediction is the Denver Broncos win and they're in, correct?
Yeah, I think Denver will find. I like home teams in the final week of the season with something to play for. I like that combination.
All right. Great. Let's go to number 3. Third topic, the Giants, the New York Football Giants. Man, right when you think like the Giants, you're going to get somewhere, you're going to get the number 1 pick. They find a way. The Giants came into the game averaging a league worst 14.3 points per game, and they hung 45 on the Indianapolis Colts, who were vying for the playoffs. They were eliminated after losing that game, and it raised questions about head coach Shane Steichen, whether he's going to return next year. But there's still questions about Brian Daboll. Who is more likely to be fired, Steichen or Daboll of the Giants? Or do they both get canned? What do you think?
I was going to say, is there a C, all of the above? Because
in this case, yes, I think there is.
I think they're both gone. I really do. It feels like Brian Daboll has been kind of a dead man walking for a while now, even though he was the NFL Coach of the Year just 2 years ago. It sounds, reading things about kind of coming out of New York, that he's butting heads with some people in the ownership group there, and that his personality kind of rubs some people the wrong way. And obviously that's fine if you're winning, but when you're not, it's gonna grease the skids, so to speak. Steichen is a more complicated call there. I mean, he's had Indy kind of in the playoff mix, but the way he's handled Anthony Richardson, I think, is a huge problem. I mean, you think back to the Pittsburgh game, 4th week of the season, Anthony Richardson on a design run gets hammered and has to come out of the game and with what looked to be like a rib injury, something like that. And he's out of the game for about 2 or 3 plays, and they put him back in. And on the very first play, they call a design run, and he gets hammered again and has to come back out. And then he misses the next couple of weeks. That is recklessness with your young supposed franchise quarterback. And then Richardson's had some odd moments. I mean, he sat out of that game with soreness. I mean, soreness. Like, who the hell's not sore in the NFL in week 17? And that's a game that they needed to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. It just feels like he hasn't had the command over that team that is necessary. So I don't know what the ownership group thinks in Indy, but it would not surprise me at all if he's gone.
I mean, I look at these two coaches, and I hate to simplify it in this way, but I have to. They tied themselves to quarterbacks. Brian Daboll to Daniel Jones, and he's not even in the organization anymore. And you have Steichen to Anthony Richardson, and there have been glaring questions about Anthony Richardson, even going back to the NFL draft. The guy did not have a lot of experience. His completion percentage when he was at Florida was god awful. We talked about that on this podcast way back when we started it. And I'm sorry, like, people will bemoan the Giants for winning that game, and there's Giants fans that are probably livid today. But if you're a competitor and you are in the NFL, unless you're Aaron Rodgers, you're not laying down for anyone because your future's on the line. And whether it's with this team or another team, you have to perform at your very best. And that's when this Anthony Richardson stuff comes up and you're thinking, what is going on? Like you said, soreness. Where's the competitor that is going to say, I'm playing? Kenny Pickett, of all people, had to have shots into his ribs. So like numbing shots so that he could play. He had one before the game and one at halftime, and the Eagles win this past weekend. I just don't understand, where is the toughness from Anthony Richardson? I mean, we're Steeler fans. We saw Ben Roethlisberger, and a lot of people said that he was a little prima donna and he would kind of exaggerate injuries, whatever. At one point, he had to wear a larger shoe on one foot over the other because of this brace that he had to wear on his foot and ankle. We saw him shatter his nose, and it looked like a Z in a game in Baltimore.
Awesome.
And he stayed in the game.
Yep.
We saw him against the Bengals barely be able to move his arm, and he gets carted off the field and comes back and is able to still throw the ball. That's what we expect. And Ben Roethlisberger is just our example as Steeler fans. You could go down the road of Brett Favre or a million other quarterbacks who always found the toughness to play. What the hell is going on with Anthony Richardson, coach?
I don't know, man, but that is a bad look for the head coach. And granted, it's not his call as to definitively whether or not Richardson plays, but it seems to hint at a lack of toughness, direction, or a coherent plan for Richardson within the organization. And that's a problem. And you mentioned these two organizations tied themselves to these quarterbacks. The clip of the Giants front office guys sitting together in a conference room deciding not to pay Saquon Barkley because they want to pay Daniel Jones. One of them literally says, "This is Daniel's year. This is Daniel's year. $12 million a year, too much to give to a 28-year-old running back. This is Daniel's year." And Saquon Barkley now, as we're going to talk about in a minute, is on the precipice of breaking the NFL rushing record. So, yeah, man, if those two head coaches go down, it will likely be because of decisions that were made about quarterbacks.
Daniel Jones, who's now a member of the Vikings practice squad. Just for those that want to know. All right, let's go to our next topic here. We're talking about the Giants still, but the Giants win now puts the New England Patriots in control of the top overall pick in the 2025 draft. New England is a good bet to lose to Buffalo on Sunday in the regular season finale. So if the Patriots do claim the top pick, who should they draft? This is interesting because Drake May is their guy. He has the look and feel of a quarterback they want to build around. I think the first question, though, Coach, is do you think Gerard Mayo is the coach that's going to make that call?
No, I really don't, man. I mean, seriously, like that, you feel bad for a guy who has only been on the job for a year. You think like, man, you should get more than a one and done. But New England has now become non-competitive. I mean, they're getting blown out of games, and it doesn't look like Drake May is developing. He had a few good weeks early on when he took over the starting job, but it feels like he's either hit a wall or regressed. And I think the most important thing you want to see with your young players, if you're struggling as a team, are your young players getting better? And I think that's going to be the thing that will ultimately undo Gerard Mayo. As to the question of who should they draft, they need skill players, man. When you look at the NFL's leading receivers, the top 50 receivers in the league, New England's got one guy in that list, and it's number 48, and it's tight end Hunter Henry. So what does that tell you, man? I mean, they can't get the ball to their receivers. And with Travis Hunter sitting there at the top of the draft as the likely overall number or the Heisman Trophy winner and potential number one pick, he'd be a tough guy to pass up, I think. You want to talk about competitors, man, and guys that just want to play and guys that just want to win. And New England, for all those years, prided themselves on being, intellectually prepared, but also being just tough. And Travis Henry brings some of that toughness. I mean, he'd be a very tempting choice for the Patriots.
Would you let him play both ways?
When's the last time, man, we had a guy do that? Have we had somebody since Deion Sanders? Charles Woodson did it a little bit.
I was going to say Charles Woodson comes to mind. I know Deion did it. It's been a while. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, because now we're talking 25 years now, at least. And maybe there have been some guys that have done it for a few reps, but no one notably. Would I let him play? I mean, do you trust his ability to pick up the playbook quickly enough to be able to implement him into a few schemes on defense? Can he be part of your dime package or your third and 15 package? Right? Can you put him at a two deep safety in that situation? I don't know. It's all going to depend. Like, how fast does this guy pick up the NFL game?
Well, that was my question, because I'm some people would say this guy's a receiver. That's all he is. But would you have the cojones as a coach to say he's actually on our depth chart? He's not starting, but he's on our depth chart at corner, and he's like our nickel corner, this CB2 in that spot. Like, would you be willing to say, like, I'm not going to ignore the fact that this guy is a well-rounded athlete and an asset to this team, and we will use him in any way possible?
Yeah, I'd be okay. I'd be open to that. I don't know enough about what Colorado's done schematically to be able to say, like, hey, here's his strength on defense. But let's say he's a great man cover guy. I mean, he seems like a dude who'd be excellent in man coverage. And now you've got a package on third and long where you go man under two deep, and you play press with safety help behind it. He's probably one of your best four press guys on the team, if that's the case. And maybe that's a package you only roll out 4 or 5 times a game. I don't think that there'd be an issue with that. If you feel like you can prepare him, see, that's to me the biggest thing. Are you able to take reps away from him during practice time on offense, where he's clearly going to need a ton of reps? Are you able to find enough reps for him in practice without compromising what he's doing on the offensive side of the ball to adequately prepare him for whatever package you want to use him on defense?
So let's go back to the question, which was, who would you pick? And you said Travis Hunter, obviously, which makes a lot of sense. I am someone that if I have my quarterback, I'm going to take a look at what can I do to move around a little bit, to gain more picks. Who would want to move up into the number 1 spot? Because if you need skill position players, let's just throw out the Giants. Right now, they're currently the number 4 pick in the NFL draft. The top 5, for those that are curious, it goes New England, Tennessee 2, Browns 3, Giants 4, Jaguars 5. So we know New England has Drake May. Tennessee, I don't know what they think about Will Levis. I guess, is he there? I agree with you. For those that are in audio, you're going to see coaches gave he's out of here. I agree. The Browns, they need a quarterback. I mean, they've just renegotiated Deshaun Watson's contract, and that's just to spread out his cap hit over future years. He's not going to go anywhere. The Giants need a quarterback. So if I'm New England, I'm sitting there and saying, who wants the top pick? Who wants Shedeur Sanders? Because if you want Shedeur, come on and give us something, because they need help. And so I've always been the type that if I'm New England and they have a quarterback and they have the number 1 pick, what can we do to get more capital? If we move from 1 to 4, let's say with the Giants, we're still going to get a top tier receiver. We're still going to have options along the offensive line, defensive line, whatever you feel is necessary. Is that the way you would lean if you're New England?
Yeah, no, you make a great point. I mean, if you with those 3 quarterback needy teams sitting right behind you, heck, man, you could get a good bidding war going between those 3, and you might be able to get a heck of a haul and still walk away with the guy that you want. So that puts New England in a pretty advantageous position.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to our final topic, which is interesting. Philadelphia Saquon Barkley rushed for 168 yards against the Cowboys on Sunday and now needs just 101 in the finale against the Giants to top the single-season rushing record set by Eric Dickerson in 1984 when they only played 16 games. Meanwhile, Lamar Jackson broke Michael Vick's record for career rushing yards by a quarterback in Baltimore's win on Christmas Day over the Texans. Which is a bigger deal to you, Barkley potentially breaking Dickerson's mark or Jackson eclipsing Vick? Before we even talk about this, can I say something? People are getting on Eric Dickerson. He's doing it again, and I'm 100% supportive of him in the fact that he's openly saying, I don't want him to break my record. And people are like,
I agree.
They're like, why in the world would Eric Dickerson say that? I don't know. It's his spot in football, like immortality. Why would I want someone to break that? If he's being honest, I love it. I love the fact that he's openly stated, I don't want this guy to break my record. So I just want to get that out of the way. Good for Eric Dickerson. I root for guys like that to keep their name in the record books. But what do you think about these two players? Which is more impressive to you?
Well, first of all, let me say I agree with you on Dickerson. That is refreshingly candid.
Yeah.
Two, I think the Eagles are 100% going to get Barkley that record. I mean, unless he gets banged up or something like that. That
Right.
They play the Giants. They're going to go. They're going to. Their formula has been get a lead early and then steamroll you with the rushing attack. And I think that that's a formula that the Giants are a perfect opponent for that. That game's at the Link.
Yep.
I mean, that place is going to be going bonkers, man. For Barkley to get that record, everybody's going to be amped up. Anybody who suggests, well, maybe we should rest him because we don't really need him for blah blah blah, that's going to get drowned out, man. Imagine if he gets like 50 yards rushing in the first half and then they sit him at halftime. That Philly crowd will boo the hell out of Nick Sirianni. They don't need a reason to boo Nick Sirianni.
No, they don't.
But to the question, man, I think I'm more impressed. I'll be more impressed if Barkley breaks it than Lamar Jackson, because I think that Lamar Jackson is a unique dude. I mean, and he is Michael Vick-esque, but he's a much better overall quarterback than Michael Vick ever was. And from the moment he came into the league, I think everybody kind of felt like, man, this guy's going to walk away as the all-time leading quarterback rusher in NFL history. That just felt like destined. I was actually a little bit surprised that he hadn't already broken it.
Yeah.
Whereas the narrative about the running back position for years now has been like it's over. The year of the big running back is over. The league has moved on. It's running backs by committee. It's free agent running backs. We're not going to see another one of these years, and here we are. So I'm very surprised that we're at this moment where Barkley's on the verge of breaking that record, because I just didn't think it would happen again.
I'm going to agree. I like the single season accolades more so than career, in terms of, we talked about earlier this in the podcast, talking about Sam Darnold and the perfect marriage with Kevin O'Connell and the people in Minnesota and the people and the assets around him. Is there a better marriage than the Eagles offensive line and Saquon Barkley? Like it's just dynamic. It's awesome. You watch them, and I mean, hell, some of these holes, I swear my mother could run through. Like, they're just gaping, and he's just off to the races. I'm going to say that Saquon Barkley is more so impressive to me. But the Michael Vick thing, I think what is impressive about that, because it's still very impressive, is that I don't think, is from an outsider's perspective and a fan narrative, no one ever thought that a quarterback that predominantly runs the way that Michael Vick did would last this long in the league. Because when you think about it, there have been great athletes at the quarterback position and players that could really run, but they also couldn't throw the ball well enough. Steelers history would tell you Cordell Stewart would fall into that category. The dude was elite with the football in his hands and in space, even as a wide receiver for a couple years. But as a quarterback, he left something to be desired. And so therefore he didn't have the staying power. Lamar has the staying power because, like you said, he is a much better quarterback than Michael Vick ever was. And it looks like he's not going anywhere, unfortunately for Steeler fans and AFC fans. But still, I'm going to go with Barkley, but I don't want to diminish what Lamar Jackson's done, because it has been special.
No, and Lamar Jackson now for his career is right around 6,200 yards. He's 27, almost 28 years old. He could play this style of football effectively for another 3-4 years, I would imagine, maybe even a little bit longer than that. It's not inconceivable that Lamar Jackson could finish his career with 10,000 rushing yards. And the fact that a quarterback could potentially eclipse that mark is mind-boggling.
Yeah, and he has dealt with injury too. Let's not forget that. Like, it's not, go back in his history, he's missed large chunks of games, and he's still doing it. Now, with Derrick Henry, he hasn't had to do it as much this year compared to previous years, but still interesting to see how that goes down. But I do see Barkley breaking that record, and poor Eric Dickerson. All right, let's finish this up with a player profile. You actually want to talk about a duo of rookie running backs that have impressed you. I'll let you go ahead and do that.
Right. So over the weekend, Bucky Irving, rookie running back for Tampa Bay, eclipsed the 1,000-yard mark. And then shortly afterwards, Tyrone Tracy, rookie running back for the Giants, did so as well. They are the two leading rookie rushers in the NFL this year. And it's interesting, man. Bucky Irving's a 4th-round pick out of Oregon. Tyrone Tracy's a 5th-round pick out of Iowa. And it sort of sets up for me a very interesting conversation about the running back position, where for the last few years, there's been the narrative that you can find the Bucky Irvings in the draft. It's not that hard to get an Irving or a Tracy and get great production from them. But then this year has kind of pulled us back towards the star running backs as well. Barkley having a monster year, Derrick Henry having a monster year, Josh Jacobs, who was a number 1 pick, having a huge year. Bijan Robinson, he's the 3rd leading rusher in the NFL right now. He was the 8th overall pick in the draft. So you're seeing the running backs who have the great pedigree having outstanding years, but you're still now seeing these mid-round guys have success. And I just wonder if when you look at the success of all of them, you kind of throw all of it out there together, if the pendulum isn't swinging back towards the run game in the NFL, the way that offenses have had so much success throwing the football, always whenever one style dominates, there's a counter move from the opposition, in this instance from defenses, right? So now defense is countering by playing so much nickel, so much 4-2-5 or dime or whatever it might be, that now are we seeing teams just simply to say, hey, man, there's a great opportunity to run the ball. And whether it's high pedigree guys like Barkley and Henry or, these mid-round draft picks like Irving and Tracy, are we experiencing a running back renaissance?
I think the big question for me when you talk about Irving and Tracy and I'm not sure where they were drafted or if they were even drafted. You
4th
have
and
all
5th
these
round.
4th and 5th rounds, but you have players like in Pittsburgh, Jaylen Warren, who is undrafted, and they're impact players. I just wonder what the NFL thought is as it pertains to where is the sweet spot to draft a running back. Because if you look at Pittsburgh as like your perfect example, you have the 1st-round draft pick in Najee Harris out of Alabama, and you have undrafted Jaylen Warren, and they are literally like 50% in terms of the Steelers' rushing attack. They do different things, yet they are just equal parts of the pie. When you think about it from an outsider's perspective, you would think the 1st-round pick is way more significant than the undrafted free agent. Or in this case, talking about the 2 players you brought up, 4th and 5th-round picks, I start to think that maybe it's not about the draft slot. It's more about what does the player bring in the scheme that you want to run. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think Bucky Irving's a perfect fit for what they're doing in Tampa Bay, because that's more of an 11 personnel, spread the field offense. He's 5'10", 195 pounds. He ran a 4.55 40, so he's not a blazer, but he's super quick. He can catch the ball to the backfield. He's a great fit for that scheme. Just like Derrick Henry's a great fit for what they want to do in Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore was probably the perfect landing spot, unfortunately, for Derrick Henry. So, yeah, man, matching the player up with the right scheme, like it is with so many other positions, seems to be particularly important at running back.
It's going to be interesting to see how this offseason plays out, but we still have the finale to get through, Coach. Why don't you let everyone know about your new podcast feed that's starting to kick up here soon?
Yeah, so this coming Thursday will be the last episode of the traditional format for my Call Sheet podcast. By the way, we're going to do New Year's resolutions for all 32 NFL football teams. That's going to be our topic. And then beginning January 6th, right, we'll go to a daily show. We're going to do the Call Sheet Daily, Monday through Friday, shorter shows, more specific topics. And, I'm really excited about that. That's an opportunity to really zero in on some very specific things and take a deep dive on them. And then just to have a daily conversation. I think that's cool too.
And for those that are curious about Coach's feed, you can actually find that anywhere we get your podcast right now by searching the Call Sheet Daily with Coach Kevin Smith. So if you type in the Call Sheet Daily with Coach Kevin Smith, Apple Podcast, Spotify, it is there. You'll see his logo. You'll see the last episode of the Call Sheet there, and then that'll start being populated by yours truly, Coach Kevin Smith, there on the 6th. So be on the lookout for that. College football talk, NFL talk. It's going to be a lot of fun. Coach, I look forward to it. Make sure you have a safe and happy new year, man, and we'll talk next week. Take it easy.